We are going to be discussing the Vishwanathji temple. I'm at Varanasi. I'm sure many of you are aware of the court cases that are going around it. Dispute in between Gyanvapi Mosque and the Vishwanathji temple. There is a historical claim that Vishwanathji temple, which was destroyed by Aurangzeb. We are going to be discussing this subject with Dr. Vikram Sampath. There couldn't be a better person, a more scholarly person. Hi, guys. Welcome to this episode of the Immortal India podcast. This is a particularly emotionally resonant podcast for me. We're going to be discussing the Vishwanathji temple. I'm sure, and at Varanasi, I'm sure many of you are aware of the court cases that are going around it. The dispute in between what is called the Gyanvapi Mosque and the Vishwanathji temple. There is a historical claim that it was in fact Vishwanathji temple. The last rebuilt version of it, which was destroyed by Aurangzeb a little over 300 years ago. We're going to be discussing this subject with Dr. Vikram Sampath. There couldn't be a better person, a more scholarly person to comment on this subject. He's written an entire book on the issue around the temple, waiting for Shiva. And before I jump into the conversation with him, let me just do a formal introduction so that you know Vikram. For those of you who don't, I'm sure many of you would know him already. Bangalore-based historian Dr. Vikram Sampath is the author of 10 acclaimed books on Indian history, from Veer Savarkar to Tipu Sultan, each of them a work in immense scholarship, big thick books. This is actually one of the slimmer ones. In 2021, Vikram was elected a fellow of the prestigious Royal Historical Society in the UK. He was awarded the Sahitya Academy's first Yuva Puraskar in English Literature and the ARSC International Award for Excellence in Historical Research in New York for his book My Name is Gohar Jan. Vikram has a doctorate in history and music from the University of Queensland, Australia. He was also a fellow of the Aspen Global Leadership Network, an Eisenhower Global Fellow, and a visiting fellow, some unpronounceable German Institute, Berlin. Currently, he is an adjunct senior fellow at Monash University, Australia. He is the founder of the Archive of Indian Music and the Foundation for Indian Historical and Cultural Research in India. One can't think of a more scholarly historian to cover a subject as sensitive and detailed as this, and a dispute that has been going for over 1,000 years. Here's the episode. Vikram, thank you so much for joining us, for joining this podcast.
Thank you, Amish. Lovely to meet you online, outside literature festivals where we rub shoulders, and been watching your podcast. It's been so excellent. And I think you're bringing a new dimension for which a lot of historians like me should be grateful to you, dimensions to our past, which we didn't know.
We need to be grateful for your scholarship because you bring so much knowledge out. We are here to discuss this particular book, Waiting for Shiva, with Vikram. Vikram has explored in a very scholarly way the issues around the Kashi Vishwanathji temple. As I'm sure many of you are aware, my roots are in Varanasi, and my family is aware of the issues around it, even when it may not have been a national issue in the 1980s. This was before the fencing was put around the Gyanvapi structure. I'm 50 years old. We've seen many of those, the ruins. We've seen it with our own eyes. But people across India don't know the entire story of the temple. And Vikram has done such a wonderful service by bringing all the details out in this book, Waiting for Shiva. Vikram, if I can just start off straight away.
Yes.
What got you interested into this subject, into the Vishwanathji temple? and the Gyanvapi dispute?
So, Amish, as you know, as a Shiv Bhakt yourself, I think nothing happens without the will of Bhagwan Shiva.
Hmm.
So, I was neck deep into my research and writing of another book on Tipu Sultan, which came out subsequently. But it was serendipity again. By chance, I was at the Pondicherry Lit Fest, and that's where during dinner, I met Vishnu Shankar Jain, the very, very passionate lawyer, fighting he and his father, the single-minded focus with which they fight for dharmic causes. During dinner, he mentioned to me about the scuffle that is going on in the courts of India on the Gyanvapi dispute, the passion with which he came forth, as he always does, and also several little bits of information, James Princeps lithographs of the mandir as he had recorded in the 19th century. All of this he was showing to me, and there was also some kind of sadness in his voice, that while the media today or people today in India might be focused on the contemporary issue, as you rightly said, many people may not even be aware as to what is it that we are fighting for. That this is not an issue that has surfaced now. It is not something that can be pegged down to individuals, political parties, and organizations, ideologies. But this has been a dharm yudh that has gone on for 1,000 years or more. And as I was, having this conversation with him, it was a moment of epiphany where I said, I think as a historian, it is my responsibility and my duty to bring all of this out into the public realm so that they understand the importance of this fight and what Kashi and the Vishwanathji's mandir there means, not just for Kashi Vasis, but for the entire Bharatiya civilization. And so on a whim, I decided that, I'll write this book on. Initially, I thought it was going to be a few articles for various portals and so on. But the as I entered the alleys of Vishwanath Mandir, literally, so much was there which even I was not aware of, and I thought a book would do justice to it. And one thing followed the other. Help started coming from multiple sources. Initially, I was just focused on the legal issue, but then I thought that would be. I'm not a lawyer myself, and that legal language, when you read the English, as English authors, I think we start disbelieving whether we know the language, the convoluted manner in which everything is put. And he dumped thousands of pages on me saying, le lo is pe research karo, you read what you want. But I thought it was, as a practicing, Sanatani myself, it was very important to also locate that sacred geography, go back to our Puranic literature. And there also, very magically by chance, I had the Shankaracharya of the Kudali Sharada Peetham in Sringeri reaching out and saying, I think he read about this somewhere, and he called me over and he said, why don't you make it a larger issue about, the what is the description of Kashi, about what is the importance of the Shivling itself. Is it the phallus as it is derided in Western literature? What do Sanskrit Pandits, talk about this? So from Shiva Puran, Linga Puran, Skanda Puran, Padma Puran, Brahma Vaivarta Puran, Vayu Puran, and a whole host of, Sanskrit Nibandhas and Mahatmyams or eulogies that were written over the centuries, which he made available for me, and also, helped me connect with two Sanskrit scholars in Bangalore, Professor Kannan and Dr. Meera. We actually went back to the sources, primary sources, and decoded it right from there. So along with the legal tangles, which are important, I think locating that sacred geography, what it meant to all of us, right from the Puranic era to, of course, Persian literature of its various waves of destruction, which have been very jubilantly documented by the aggressors. British colonial records, which speak abundantly about what all travelers saw, right from Hyun Sang down to, Sev Al-Baruni and Peter Mundy, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, so their travelogues. So even for me as a writer and a historian, it was a very different experience to navigate extremely different kind of sources, and string them together in a kind of a cogent narrative, bringing it down to right the present moment of the ASI survey report, which came out in January 2024. So from the Anadi Kal to the ASI report. It was a long journey for me, and I think through my pen, through my eyes, it was a darshan for me, not only of Kashi Vishwanath but of the entire Bharatiya Sabhyata in the process, as to what that means and how it has been derided and
How it has
distorted.
been belittled in a way. There was I won't take the name of the journalist, but a tweet had been put up by a journalist when Prime Minister Modi
Mhm.
had gone to Vishwanathji. This was prior to uh, the Parisar being expanded, and he'd prayed out there. And a tweet had this was early in his first tenure,
Mhm.
and a tweet had been put up that if he's gone out there, for the sake of secularism, he could have just walked a little bit across, excuse me, to the Gyanvapi Mosque and prayed there. This tweet was actually put up by a journalist. I'm assuming she must have just Googled what is the closest mosque.
Yes,
Uh,
and that gets
and
people political
uh,
dividends.
and and she just posted this tweet, and it was like a stab
Yeah,
through the heart for someone who's been in Varanasi. That how can you even ask a Shiv Bhakt to do this?
yeah.
Um, and so Firstly, most of them don't even realize the importance of the Vishwanathji temple. So before going into the various waves of destruction which began in the 11th century, if you could take us through briefly on what the texts say, because apparently our beliefs don't mean that much. So what do the ancient texts say of the importance of the Kashi Vishwanathji temple?
Of the Vishwanathji temple, Amish, but alongside Kashi itself, as you know. I
Yeah.
mean, one place which has so many names. Kashi, of course, coming from the Sanskrit root of Kash, which means anything that shines. So the city of illumination, luminescent city or a bright city. Banaras or upper branch of Varanasi, a place which is between the Varna and the Assi rivers on the north and the south. The Assi, of course, has become even in the Puranic times, it was called the Shushka Nadi or the dried river. You also call it the Avimukta Kshetra. So in the Skanda Puran, you have this whole story of how after Bhagwan Shiv's marriage, both of them, Parvati Mata and he, are going back to Kailas, and on their way, they look down and they see this beautiful wonderful place which is stream with streams and orchards and animals and all of that, and they decide to descend on this place, and both their feet are put there, and 5 kos, a circumference of 5 kos in units is covered, and that is how you have this panchakroshi yatra that is done there. And Shivji is so fascinated by the place that he gives a vow there that, I'm never going to leave this place and go. And so it is an Avimukta Kshetra, and it's never abandoned by me. But also Avimukta because he, in the Skanda Puran again, tells Parvati Devi that whoever dies here, whoever leaves the mortal coil here, when the soul leaves the body and comes out, I am going to come and chant the Tarak mantra in their soul's ears, and so mukti is assured here. Now, all our Sanatan Panthas, whether it is Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, the preponderance is mukti, moksha, liberation, nirvana, salvation. So, if there is a place which is actually assuring us that, as promised to us by the presiding deity himself, that's no Sanatani would want to not be a part of it. That's why I think every part of India built something there. Every Rajwada, every philosophical school, they made it a microcosm of the larger, Bharat in Kashi, because you wanted a piece of the pie when mukti is assured. So Avimukta Kshetra, and also Mahasmasana, where 24/7 you have at the Manikarnika Ghat, you have the pyres burning, and where death is not considered something unholy. It's a part of life, and right in the middle of that smashan is the head of the smashan sitting there, and sending all souls to heaven. And Rudravasa, this is another name where, as you know, in Banaras, Kankad Kankad mein Shankar baste hain. So it's everything is an embodiment of Rudra is living there. So this place in our scriptural text has this kind of meaning. And among the seven cities, which Avantika, Puri and other places, we have Kashi, Kanchi, and all these places which assure you of moksha. And I think that is one reason why this place was so important, not only for the Sanatanis, in terms of the Hindu, Pantha, but also for the Buddhists and the Jains. Gautam Buddha gets, after his enlightenment, the very first sermon he gives at the Ishi Pattana Mrigadeva, which is the deer park at near Sarnath, just outside Banaras. And even the Jain Tirthankaras, some of them were born there. Mahavira also comes there. So it is for them too. The Vaishnava sect, of course, Vallabhacharya was there. Ramanujacharya's, monasteries are also there. Adi Shankaracharya, who had already been enlightened, they say this is where he met that Chandala. Gives him the final, which is Shiva himself in that form, who gives him the enlightenment of Advaita. So that's why you see today, other than, of course, Rajwadas, as I said, all the philosophical schools, whether it is Vaishnava, Shaiva Panthas, Shaktas also, because Manikarnika being the one of the places where Sati Mata's the earring fell. And so the Shakta Panthas, the Ramanandis, the Kabir Panthis, the Veerashaivas, the Aghoris, the Gorak Panthis, the Naga Akhadas, all of them, made this a sacred geography. So that has been the importance of this place, and that is not limited only to the people who were born there or who have been fortunate enough to, like you, who can claim that Varanasi is your hometown and you hail from there. But I think every Bharatiya, and I think in the course of this conversation, it would become clear to everyone that every Bharatiya, not now or a few years ago, but for centuries now, we've held that as such an important place, which has a civilizational memory and reverence, which goes intergenerational.
And perhaps that's why the invaders came. So, because they knew how important it was. If you want to break our hearts, if you want to break our souls, this is a place that the invaders would probably want to attack. If you can take us through the first invasions that happened and how the temple was rebuilt repeatedly. Many of us Varanasi people were, of course, aware of what even Razia Sultan did, but it would have been a shock to many non-Varanasi people. They found out that Razia Sultan had committed this heinous crime as well.
Yes.
One who was built up as this great liberating warrior.
Yeah, Hema Malini playing her wonderful role.
Yeah.
That's all we remember.
Yeah.
So the first attack, Amish, on Varanasi, by then the Gahadwals had reigned supreme in northern India. Post the Guptas, you had a lot of churn for power in northern India. The Gurjara Pratiharas, the Kalachuris, the Paramaras, and eventually it is the Gahadwals who not only shift their capital from Kannauj to Kashi. And so after centuries, from the time of the Shodasha Mahajanapadas, when Kashi was one of the 16 Janapadas, it had slowly gone into a period of oblivion politically. Spiritually and so on, it was always there. But political resurgence of Kashi comes back with the Gahadwals. And so during that time, you have the invasions of Muhammad Ghazni. And so 1033 CE is when Ahmad Nialtagin, who's a treasurer of Muhammad Ghazni, he tries to make the first attempt to plunder Varanasi, but he's thwarted. And a year later, 1034-35, that's something that you would resonate with. You had Ghazni's nephew, Sayyid Salar Masood, who comes again to attack. One part of his army under Malik Afzal Alawi is sent to Varanasi to attack it. And Masood himself, as you have written so evocatively, is defeated by Suhail Dev in the Battle of Bahrech. But Alawi also comes to Varanasi. He is completely routed there. And these are two aborted attempts that happen. Of course, in Varanasi, though, there is still an Alavi Pura. And you have a Sayyid Masood also. You have the Ghazi, shrine for which the Urs also happens, which has now been stopped, fortunately, by the Uttar Pradesh government. So it is during this time and after one of the greatest rulers of the Gahadwal kingdom was Govinda Chandra, who really understood that these Turks are coming again and again. And he also imposes a tax called the Turushka Danda, which is a specific, Turushka is the Sanskrit word for the Turks, Ghazni and others. And so a standing army created.
Just one thing I should clarify for those who don't know what we call the Delhi Sultans and Mughals, they were actually Turks. They were from Central Asia. So, what Vikram is clarifying, that's how our ancestors refer to them, Turushka, which is Sanskrit for Turks. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So Turushka Danda, or the tax that Govinda Chandra put on them to raise a standing army exclusively to attack and repel the Turks. In fact, you have his wife Kumara Devi. There's an undated inscription of hers where she praises her husband for repelling the Turks. And the interesting part, Amish, those of the Marxist historians who keep trying to create this binary between Hindus and Buddhists, both of Govinda Chandra's wives were Buddhists. And he himself was a Vaishnav, but he hugely patronized all the Shiva temples, especially Vishwanath and Avimukteshwara. So there was no marital discord. The husband and wife lived happily ever after. So Hindus and Buddhists were living in harmony, marital harmony too, as late as the 11th century. It was after Govinda Chandra that you had Jai Chandra, who is defeated wholly and squarely by Kutubuddin Aibak when Ghori does the next wave of attacks. So 1194 CE is the first attack where Kutubuddin Aibak, after so many thwarted attempts by the Turks, they managed to ransack Kashi, and it's a heart-rending account which their contemporaries write. And just to read those originals in Persian, translate those, it broke my heart because the savagery and the brutality is described in gory details. For instance, there is Ibn Asir who talks about the amount of wealth that was there in the city was put on 700 elephants and 1,400 camels and taken back to Delhi. And another, contemporary Hassan Nizami talks about 1,000 temples in the city being completely razed to the ground, to rubble. So most probably the original temple of Vishwanathji was also destroyed. Not most probably, certainly was destroyed in this, first iconoclastic wave of Aibak. Now you look at this, it's 1194 when this happens. Now hardly about 20 years later, in 1212 CE, from distant Bengal, you had the Sena ruler called Vishwarupa, who comes and right in the heart of Varanasi, he erects a victory pillar. And the inscription on that reads that this city belongs to Vishweshwar. It was the Delhi Sultanate's, you mentioned 1206, it was established, so it was at its height. Iltutmish and others were there. So obviously he could not rebuild an entire temple, but it was literally like, marking your copyright on the city saying this is ours.
We will not die.
Yes. So this was in 1212. And so in the interim, I think someone else had built a little shrine. And that's the whole thing. Hindu shrines rose, shrines fell. But the Hindus of Kashi never gave up, or the Hindus of the whole of Bharat never gave up. So you had a small shrine that had come up in the interim. And in just 4 years, as you mentioned, between 1236 and 1240 that she ruled, Razia Sultan gets the time amidst all the internal troubles she had in Delhi to come and destroy temples, particularly of Vishwanath. And you have still just a few yards away on the back side of the Vishwanath corridor today, you have the Razia Masjid, which is supposed to have been built by her.
How fanatical must she be that with all the troubles that she was facing, because many of the Turkic nobles were opposing her. She had an affair with an Abyssinian slave, Yakut,
Yes.
if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
which was being opposed. And she had just 4 years. But despite all this, she comes all the way to Kashi to break this temple. I mean,
that's how you get the sanction to rule as a legitimate, pious, Islamic ruler, even from the ulema. So I think this was those who didn't do it would get the rough end of the stick from the ulema. So, but she does this in 1230, 1240. And after that, we have another very interesting donation that comes from Western India, from a Vyapari, a very wealthy businessman in Gujarat called Seth Vastupal, who gives close to 1 lakh of rupees in those days to rebuild a very magnificent temple. So hardly less than 50 years of the first destruction, you had a grand temple coming up in the same site. Then you come a little further, 1270 or so, from the state I come from, Karnataka. You had the Hoysala ruler, Veera Narasimha III, who actually donates an entire village in his kingdom called Hebbale. And the inscription which is there clearly mentions that all the proceeds of the revenues that come from this village will go to finance the Tirthayatris, the pilgrims who will have to go to Kashi and to pay the jizya. So even to visit our own temples, we had to pay tax to the Delhi sultans. And those who could not afford, here was a king in southern India at a time, again, when the Hoysala Empire was in a lot of political turmoil and tumult. He still thought it appropriate that, his subjects who wanted to go and pay their respects to Vishwanathji, they needed financial support, and so an entire village had to be donated for the same cause. And the inscription says, this is in the lotus feet of Vishweshwara is what I give all this up to. So today we talk of North, South, and all of that, of the Bengali ruler or the Gujarati businessman or a Kannada, Maharaja did not think, ये तो उत्तर प्रदेश है, how does it matter, Hindi and us are different. I mean, these silly, cheap tricks we do for today's politics has no historical basis, as these things reveal to us. Now, after, so there was this grand temple which was certainly there till the 13th, 14th century. Then, of course, you had the Sharki Nawabs of Jaunpur, who around 1350, 1360, they come and demolish these temples. Again, there is a wave of reconstruction. A final blow is also dealt in 1496, 1494-96 by Sikandar Lodi, once the Lodis come in Delhi. And the whole of Varanasi, including the Vishwanath temple, are completely reduced to rubble. And that's the darkest period in the history of, rituals and temples and all of that comes there. But you see, when we draw a parallel, Amish, even with the Crusades, I mean, for 200 years, the Christian Latin Church, the Crusades that they launched, the Bloody Crusades, to reclaim the holy site of Jerusalem, that you can say led in some way to the Renaissance, the Reformation, the modern era, and so on. So our crusades were also happening silently in a very, distant parallel. They were not as bloody as those crusades, but right from that intent of that Bengali ruler to come and put that pillar, or this Kannadiga, Maharaja to give away a village. It was a crusade to say this is ours. But there was a Renaissance and Reformation also that followed, which, I mean, in the story of kings and queens, we forget what the common people also did. A huge group of people. Now, at the time when Sikandar Lodi had broken the whole of Varanasi, and there was no scholarship, the Sanskrit scholarship that was there, which was thriving, that having gone out, you had
It was
these.
also around a time when even Kashmir was under attack because
Oh,
Sharda Peeth
yes,
was
demolished.
extremely critical. So scholarship around India was
Yes,
under
yes.
attack, and they didn't build any universities, but the Turks, they ended up destroying many of those. Yes.
Yeah, Nalanda had been destroyed around this time. The Sikandar Butchikan in Kashmir, as you mentioned, weighing Janeus and killing people by that. So at such a time when scholarship was on the extinction, people today would have run away from a place which was the site of conflict. But look at the courage of these four Brahmin families from Maharashtra and Karnataka, who are known as the Dakshini Pandits, Shesha, Mauni, Bhatta, and Dharmadikari, those surnames. They migrate and go and settle down in Varanasi. And they try to revive the Sanskrit scholarship. And so during this time, I'm talking of 1300 to 1500, 1600, early 1600, you have a plethora of treatises that get, composed. You have Lakshmi Dhara's Kritya Kalpataru. Then all these Puranic literature, there is a Parishishta or an appendix that is done. So the Skanda Puran was the original version. To that, there is a Parishishta added called the Kashi Khanda around this time. Similarly, the Brahma Vaivarta Puran, you had the Kashi Rahasya, which was added. You had something called Tirtha Chintamani, which Vachaspati Mishra, not the Advaitin scholar, there's another one from Mithila, he, composes. Tristhali Setu of Narayan Bhatt. And about Narayan Bhatt, I'll talk in a little more detail. Mitra Mishra's Tirtha Prakash, all of this get composed during this time. And why is this? This is almost like archiving and documenting. And what is the content of these? I went through all these nibandhas, particularly with references to how they locate the Mahatmyams and the sacred shrines. So it's literally like in poetic verse, they are telling you, you start from this place, you go right straight, there you find this Shivlinga, then you take a right, you find this, then you cross the Gangaji, then you get this Shivling. So literally you're archiving and putting a literary map for us, so that you never know when the next iconoclastic wave will happen. So perchance, if the entire structure is destroyed, you still have a blueprint, a map to look back to.
No way to build it.
Yeah.
Because the belief was that Varanasi itself is a spiritual place. All the temples were not there
Yes.
randomly.
Randomly, yes. So
Yeah.
it is a spiritual yantra. So as you rightly said, each of those are nucleuses, points. Of course, the central nucleus is Vishweshwar, but all the others, unless and until they are located in those precise places, it would lose its potency.
Yeah.
So that is why I think our ancestors were also documenting. Those of us who rue that, we never documented stuff, we didn't do things in such difficult circumstances, under the eyes of the sultans of Jaunpur and Delhi and Lodhis and Tughlaqs and Khiljis, these people risked their life, settled down in Kashi and put it out for us, which we still have as an archival document. Of course, couched in a lot of, as our Puranic literature, and a lot of stories and beliefs, but the historical evidence, archaeological evidence, literally was there in these documents. And this Narayan Bhatt, particularly, who was very, very great scholar of Sanskrit, he was almost called Jagat Guru. So he used his good offices with the Hindus in Akbar's court, Todarmal and Raja Man Singh and so on. And Akbar's time, at least the second half of his empire, was slightly less, bigoted as it was earlier. So with that munificence, Narayan Bhatt in 1580, 86, around that time, reconstructs after 60, 70 years, or no, 90 years after Sikandar Lodi, a magnificent Vishwanath Mandir, which is this beautiful Ashtamandap. Right at the center, there is Vishwanathji, and at each of the four corners, there are different, Rudras, Dandapani, Bhairav, Ganesh, and Dwarpals, and all of that scattered there. And this is the lithograph that much later James Princip, produces in the 19th century. Yeah. Now, this temple too, and this temple is visited thereafter. So 1580, if it was when it was, constructed, between then and 1669 of Aurangzeb, you had several visitors who came, Peter Mundy, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, a French traveler. All of them talk about how beautiful this temple was, how people, went and did Jalabhishek to Vishwanath. In fact, Peter Mundy even draws a picture of that, of how Shivji looked in that Garbhagriha. So, but it was a short-lived period. Of course, immediately after that, Shah Jahan's time, there were attempts to demolish many temples. He did demolish temples, but Kashi was somehow saved. There also the importance of a very, great scholar whom we should recount, Kavindra Bharati, Kavindra Acharya Saraswati, who goes all the way to Agra. And in an open court, he makes an impassioned plea to Shah Jahan about why this jizya tax is such a unjust tax which is being levied on the Hindus. And he was supposed to have been blessed with such a gift of the gab and poetic flourish that even Shah Jahan was just lulled, and jizya was forgiven on the Hindus, and this man comes back to Varanasi to a hero's welcome. But all those happy feelings were very short-lived, because in 1669 you have in April 1669, as recorded in the Masir-e Alamgiri of Aurangzeb's courtier Saki Mustaid Khan, he mentions that all those evil places of Thatta, Multan, Banaras, and not only the temples but also the schools where the wicked Brahmins are teaching people foolish sciences and all of that should be razed to the ground. This is in April. And by September 1669, one of the farmans that the people from Banaras send back to him is that, as per your orders, All the temples in Banaras, including that of Bishnath, as an upper branch of Vishwanath, have been destroyed. And that temple that was destroyed was the one constructed by Narayan Bhatt in 1580. And while the other people demolished it and went away, I think Aurangzeb realized that these Hindus will again build one more thing close to it. So let me remove. And if he wanted, he could have broken the whole thing and built a magnificent mosque in its place. But what he does is he only breaks the shikharas, the gopurams of the temple, and superimposes the three gumbads on it. And from the next day, lo and behold, it is called the Gyanvapi Masjid. That is the Gyanvapi Masjid that we see today, which was the original temple which was built by Narayan Bhatt during Akbar's time. And so even today, when you go through gate number 4 in the Vishwanath corridor, the first thing that hits your eye is the Khandahar, the ruins of that 16th century temple of Narayan Bhatt.
Mosque on top of it.
Just
So-
imagine the mentality, Amish. Every day, the Hindus of India,
See.
the Hindus of Varanasi should be looking at this horrendous piece where, your most sacred Jyotirlinga, one of the 12 Jyotirlingas, the Mukti Dham, our temple is in such a pitiable condition, and how insulted and inferior you must feel every day. That was the intent of doing
The
this.
intent, I mean, we Varanasi people used to believe it very clearly that the entire idea of keeping that wall and the mosque structure there was to actually rub our noses in it. And to all the viewers watching here, we'll show you images so you can see uh, the sections of the temple that were left by Aurangzeb with the mosque right on top of it, as a sign of the subjugation that Hindus of that time must uh, tolerate and suffer. After the destruction of Aurangzeb, there were some small attempts to rebuild parts of it. The Marathas tried. Ahilyabai
Yes.
was the most successful. So if you can just take us briefly through that, then I want to jump into the court case
Yeah.
happening right now.
I think the biggest resilience that the Hindus showed, even at the heights of Aurangzeb's bigotry, Amish, I think it's exemplified by one of the poets in his court called Chandrabhan, who was a Brahmin, and he wrote with the pen name of Barahaman. And so, just to rub salt on Chandrabhan's wounds, he asked, "So, can you describe your feelings today? That a day after the
Aurangzeb asked him.
Aurangzeb asked him in court, what are your feelings now that your temple has been destroyed?" And he says this, and I quote him: "O Sheikh, see the wondrous greatness of my temple in that it becomes the house of your God only after its downfall." So, and Aurangzeb was supposedly seething with rage, but he couldn't do much. Now, even at that heights of his, bigotry, you had the Rajputana, several of the rulers, whether it was the Maharajas of Rewa or the Maharana of Udaipur, who kept coming there in stealth and secrecy. And so there are various stories that actually the original Shivling was taken away. The priests had got to know it was hidden in the Gyanvapi well.
Yeah.
We don't have corroborated information, but this
Most
is
popular one among the Varanasi locals is that yes, it was in the well.
so it was in the well, then it was stealthily placed in one of the houses of one of the people. And so as early as 1672, which is just 3 years after Aurangzeb's destruction, you had Rajas from Rajputana, whether it was Bhava Singh of Mewar or Maharana Jagat Singh, all these people visiting there and doing some puja. If there were no temple, what were they actually praying? So there was something that was going on. Much later, you had towards the end of the century, you had Bishan Singh ji of Jaipur, Amber, who did a lot of research about what the original location of Vishwanathji's mandir could have been. And that is why there is a little bit of a tussle there also. So his records seem to prove that the original mandir was the one that Razia Sultan demolished, and not the one that Narayan Bhatt had built. Narayan Bhatt had built it a little distance away for whatever reason. But the idea is once the murti is, pran pratishtha is done, that entire circumference of some radius is imbued with divinity and so on. And so you could build it in the periphery of that. So his son, the great Savai Jai Singh, who establishes the Jaipur royal family, builds the Adi Vishweshwar Mandir. So even today from gate number 4, if you actually go a few 500 meters away, you have the Adi Vishweshwar Mandir there, which is controlled by the government of Rajasthan's Devasthan department. And the priest there tells you that the Shivling may be new, but the Pitham of the Linga, that is the original one which the Jaipur kings had saved and kept right from the time of Kutubuddin Aibak. So for 1,000 years, that has been saved. Also, the Ma Sringar Gauri and Saubhagya Gauri, their pratimas are also kept safe by Jai Singh, Savai Jai Singh, and the Jaipur royalty. Now, Jaipur was one, the other major force, which was the Marathas. It is said that, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj was alive when Aurangzeb did this, and his mother, Jijabai, Mata Jijabai, is supposed to have been so, angered, and she poetically tells him that if you're man enough, the goal of your life is to get Vishwanathji's mandir reconstructed. And on his deathbed, people are supposed to be telling him that, make your prasthan to the next world happily. And he's supposed to have said, how can I go away in peace when my Vishwanathji is in shackles? And so that becomes the leitmotif of the Maratha Empire itself successively. So all the Peshwas, while they are in the midst of their conflict, whether it is Nana Saheb or Madhav Rao Peshwa, they're constantly negotiating either with the Mughals or later with the Awadh Nawabs or the East India Company too. Madhav Rao Peshwa leaves behind a will which says the responsibility of all my successors in the Maratha Empire is to liberate Kashi, Mathura, Ayodhya, Gaya, and all these Prayag and these places, and bring that back, and particularly Kashi. Even in the peak of the Anglo-Mysore War with Tipu Sultan, Nana Fadnavis puts that as a clause with Lord Cornwallis, saying, you give us control over Varanasi, then we will, fight the war with you. They are unsuccessful, but still, the consciousness was still alive. And much later, it is, of course, Malharrao Holkar also tries to bring an entire army to break the mosque. But then it's the Pandits of Varanasi who tell him, you don't do this, you will do this and go away, and then we will be under the, wrath of the Awadh Nawabs. So much later, 1775 to 1780 is when his daughter-in-law, Ahilyabai Holkar, Punya Shlok, as she's called, she reconstructs this. And the temple that we see today is a reconstruction of this great lady who reconstructed so many, temples across the length and breadth of India. I think how much ever our civilization pays its obeisance to this woman, whose 300th anniversary, I think we are commemorating now, is insufficient, because she did a cultural reuniting of India, almost like what Adi Shankara did with the establishment of the Pithas, the four
Well,
Pithas.
it's an indictment of our establishment Marxist historians that they didn't recognize and celebrate this great woman in our history books. She was reduced to a footnote. In fact, most history books didn't even mention her. So those of us, like in Varanasi, of course, we knew her, but and now fortunately her legacy is being revived. But, it's an indictment of their bigotry and bias. I mean, even if they claim to stand up for women rulers, well, I mean, there couldn't have been at least in the last few centuries, a greater one than Rani Ahilyabai Holkar. But it says something about them that they celebrated Razia Sultan, not Maharani Ahilyabai Holkar.
So true. And someone who was a widow who...
There's, in practical terms, even if you put her bigotry aside, there's very little that Razia Sultan, in practical terms, that she achieved for her own people also. She actually achieved nothing. She was just there for 4 years.
Correct.
But Rani Ahilyabai Holkar achieved so much.
Yeah. And literally integrating the north, the south, all the
indictment of the bigotry of the Marxist.
Very true. I mean, there's so many things to indict them on. This is certainly a very big one. And the other fault line that they bring about, the Hindus and the Sikhs. You had Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who the Swarna Mandit, gold crusted shikhar that you see of the temple today was given by Maharaja Ranjit Singh. In fact, as a young boy, in 1797, when he defeats the Duranis, Zaman Shah in Afghanistan, one of the conditions he puts is give back the gateway of the Somnath Mandir.
That you have taken.
A little boy, maybe in his teens or something, who's probably not too educated, there was a cultural memory that 800 years ago, our Jyotirling was destroyed, and at least give me back the gateway of that. And we say India was not a country and we were united after British, colonialism. If this is not a common cultural consciousness and a common sense of emotional connect, what else is a Punjabi, a Maharashtrian, a Rajasthani, a Kannadiga, Bengali, Gujarati are all joining hands and forces, man, woman, centuries, and various castes and everything, just to revive and resurrect and keep alive this sacred place.
temple.
How much importance would, and how easily we say, "Arey, wahan pe, why don't we build a hospital? Why don't we give it away?" Our ancestors didn't give it away, so who are we to give it away to anybody?
Build a hospital, but it doesn't have to be built at that spot.
Exactly.
So Vikram, on the court case itself, that is going on right now. There are arguments being presented. The Honorable Court did ask for an ASI survey. There are some claiming that there was no temple there, and even uh, the ruins of the temple that you see with the mosque on it. Uh, I read a Marxist historian using a very clever term called architectural reuse, something like that. If you can take us through the arguments being presented.
So we had gone down the story till the 18th century end, Amish, and after that too, the place, though Ahilyabai had constructed this temple, the
But it
site
wasn't on the original temple. She built a small
a
temple
little
on the
further
side.
away. Yeah, though we had the Adi Vishweshwar with the Jaipur Maharaja had built there, but in between you had the Gyanvapi Masjid. So that entire area constantly remained under contestation. And quoting British colonial records, judicial records that I accessed, every second year, third year, there was some dispute, fights between the two communities. So much so in 1809-10, you had these terrible riots that rocked Varanasi called the Lat Bhairo riots in the colonial documents. The Lat Bhairav that is there, Kapal Bhairav's, this one was destroyed by the other community, and that led to extremely bloody fights. You had all the Naga sadhus, everyone coming on the streets, and almost the Gyanvapi Masjid was set on fire. At that time, some of the British, so the contestation begins at that point, 1810, which is hardly 20-30 years.
Contestations in the British records. There were contestations happening on contestations in the British records.
Recorded by them, at least, with the Awadh having come under them by then. So you had all these cases that go later, especially after 1858, you have proper judicial records once the British Crown had taken over. And so then you have on the flimsiest of reasons, the tree, the branch of it is coming into this area, this belongs to me, this well belongs to me. So the place was never given up by either side. Now, the flashpoint happens in 1936-37 when this man called Deen Muhammad, a common Muslim, along with 4 other young people, they approached the courts in Varanasi because the British government had clamped down on the Muslim community who were encroaching the entire area, out spilling over outside the masjid, and also doing their alvida namaz and so on inside the Vishwanath complex, in the streets. For the British, it was a traffic nuisance and all that, and so they clamped it down. So these 5 men go to the court against the British government. It's not against the Hindus, but inadvertently, a lot of facts then start coming out. The British judge, summons everybody, historians and Professor Altekar and people like that who come and give testimonies. So it's a fascinating account of all the accounts, people telling how they did this Panchakroshi Yatra every day. My grandfather used to do like this, that. And so that case brought out 2 main things which the British, judge, deduced. One was this place, the Gyanvapi Masjid, was not a Waqf property. Now that this term is so much in use, there were no documents. Aurangzeb destroyed the temple is a fact. There was a farman, but there is no dedication done or a document. Kagas nahi dikhayenge, but show us the kagas as to where was this dedicated by the Waqif to the cause of Allah. And so that the Muslim side could not produce in the British court. And so the British judgment of 1937 mentioned that this is not a Waqf property because they have not bothered to show us that document. Also, he didn't put it in the judgment, but in the observations it comes. Maybe it was a sensitive matter, and so they didn't put it in the final judgment. He says, as per Islamic law itself, worshipping or doing namaz on an encroached property or someone else's property is haram. And so, by that logic, also, this is not yours. So, it was a very, very clear indictment. So, even for those who say Places of Worship Act, at 1947, when India got independence, forget the other places, at least Kashi Gyanvapi case, the religious nature was never clear. It was still in a fuzzy state of doubt. And the Muslim side then go to the Allahabad High Court in an appeal. The High Court dismisses it after going through all these records for 4-5 years. This is 1942 we are talking of. And they dismiss the case with very strict punishment to the petitioners. Now, after that, we have freedom, we have everything. And for a long time under Nehruvian secularism, I think though the case was in the favor of the Hindus, nobody pursued that. And the first case that gets filed is in 1991, just I think when the whole country was having this resurgence with the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. That's when Vijay Rastogi ji and others file a case, and that case is filed on behalf of Vishwanathji. As you know, our deities are all legal entities, and the next of friend, because he's a minor, the next of friend as a lawyer goes and files this case.
This is how even the Ram Janmabhoomi
Ram Lalla
case
is
was, Ram Lalla is a minor, and there is an ex friend. Same thing with
this.
Yeah.
So Vishwanathji files this case in 1991, saying this entire plot, 9130 is a settlement plot, belongs to me and my devotees and so on. And to ascertain, how do you ascertain the religious character as it existed in 1947? Through evidence, through archaeological means and so on. So this case also asked for that, the 1991 case. But by then you had the 6th December happening, and then you had the Places of Worship Act coming, the Waqf Act. So that whole case just went into coma after that. Then the Rastogi case of 1991. It got revived much later, only in 2019, when Mr. Rastogi again filed a case. But around that same time, when that case was going on, there was one more case which was filed on behalf of 5 Hindu women in 2021. And they contended that, though this was a masjid, now the western walls, the Pashchimi Divar, had deities of Sringar Gauri, Ma Sringar Gauri, and every day women used to go there and put haldi kumkum and do worship. Now, what kind of a mosque it is, where on one of its walls there is a Buddha which is being worshipped, and in the Tehkhana, the cellar, you had the Vyasji ka Tehkhana, which now got opened. There also there was worship happening. Now, and till 1993, this was being allowed. But in 1993, Mulayam Singh Yadav's government barricaded this whole thing and barred all people from going inside the mosque because of the
Varanasi people, remember, in the 80s, for example, we could go.
Yes, you could go.
It was barricaded only, yeah.
Correct. So these women then said, so the Mulayam Singh Yadav's government, in effect, altered the Places of Worship Act by doing this. If you say you have to freeze the religious character as it existed in 1947, how could you put a barricade and then stop the Hindu women from worshipping? So these 5 women went with that limited point that grant us access to go into the Gyanvapi Masjid complex, because they were offered only once a year on the Vasant Navratri on the 4th day to go and do this puja. So we want to go there every day. We want to do this. That was their contention. And that's how the case, and this case was led by Hari Shankar Jain ji and Vishnu Shankar Jain ji. And in fact, I had lengthy, interviews with all of them, with the plaintiffs, those women and so on. And Hari ji laughingly said, Vishwanath ji, he's a, sadhu, ascetic, he doesn't care whether you put him in a smashan, you put him in a masjid, you put him anywhere. But when the case was filed in the name of Ma, she's not going to tolerate any insult to her husband. When it came from her own father, she, created a ruckus and desecrated his havan also. So the minute the case was filed on behalf of Sringar Gauri, the thing started galloping and went fast, of course, in jest. But if one wants to believe it, one can. So very soon, even the previous case, Jo Latak Raha Tha for so long, that also got revived. And then the two cases were joined because what was the contention? That we need to know the character, religious character. So first, the court ordered an advocate commissioner survey that was done in 2021. And that also, there was a lot of back and forth. It went to the Allahabad High Court. It was, struck down. It went to the Supreme Court. Finally, the advocate commissioner survey happens. And I think around this time, around 16th of May, 2022 is when you remember that day, when the Hindu side, Vishnuji and others had gone with these women, and they go to the Vazookhana, and they saw something which is very suspicious, and they wanted to inspect that. The other side said, no, no, don't overstretch and so on, but they insisted. And you had the advocate commissioner who had come, and he also said, we have to see that as per the directions of the court. And as the water in that Vazookhana kept coming down, that is how you had Mahadev coming up again, and Vishnuji and the others recount how, almost involuntarily everyone raised their hands there and Har Har Mahadev. And the sadness of that whole thing, and the Nandi that is facing the mosque side is exactly opposite this Vazookhana. And the sadness of that is, we're talking of 75 years of secularism and so on. When one group of people know that a symbol, a deity that is very sacred to another community, my own brother and sister in this country, knowingly I go and wash my feet, I rinse my mouth at that place, and then expect a brotherhood and secularism, I think that is extremely misplaced, because I think all relationships need to be two-sided. One-sided relationships fail. So this was I think a tipping point, I would say, in the so-called history of secularism in India. And that led to another thing, which was the advocate commissioner, the ASI survey, which all these people had been asking for. Now, frankly speaking, Amish, as you said, Hath Kangan ko RC kya? You enter, you see that you don't need a ASI to come and say, unlike Ayodhya, where everything
For the
was
viewers, we'll show those pictures again, and we'll also show Nandiji, the original Nandiji, who's actually looking at whether Gyanvapi structure is. We'll show that when you guys can see the pictures and judge for yourself. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, and we went through the entire charade of the ASI, and that also there was so much of opposition. But right from the highest court, from the Supreme Court, struck down all the opposition, and the ASI survey was done. And 800 pages of the report, select portions of it, I have reproduced in the appendix, which show very clearly, all that we spoke about the history of the place. There were inscriptions not just in Devanagari, but also in Tamil, in Telugu, in Kannada, in various Indian languages, which showed how every part of India was invested emotionally, financially, spiritually in the sustenance of this place. You had murtis dating back to the 12th, 13th, 15th century. This was done with the latest technology, ground penetrating radar and handheld, X-ray spectrometers and all of that, without destroying the mosque structure. And 800 pages, which came out in January 2024. That is where the case stands today. After that, of course, you had elections, you had things going on a back burner. And I think the case currently, the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court, has claimed a moratorium on all these contentious cases going on. But with everything on our side, we have literary evidence, we have historical evidence, we have Puranic records, we have traveler accounts, we have epigraphic accounts, we have ASI report, we have the Advocate Commissioner survey, and the naked eye as proof to see what that place is. Despite that, we are going through a peaceful, legal, movement to reclaim something which didn't start today with one individual or one political party or some organization, but right from 1,000 years, all those sacrifices. In conclusion, I think it's so important we talk of these rinas that we have to various. You have Deva Rina and Rishi Rina. You have Bhuta Rina to the environment, Manushya Rina to the rest of society. The fifth Rina that we have or obligation is to the Pitrus, our ancestors. So I think Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj's last words, that how can I go in peace until Kashi Vishwanath is liberated, I think it rankles in the ears of every Sanatani and a Hindu, that restoring it is not a political agenda, it's not a political movement. It is deeply civilizational, it is deeply based on belief, and it is deeply based also on proof and evidence, not blind faith that this is this and that. It is a reclamation of a sacred spot that means so much to the Bharatiya civilization.
Vikram, the greatest devotee of Lord Shiva, as you know, is Lord Nandi.
Yes.
And he waits patiently.
Yeah.
But he is also very clear he will not move till Lord Shiva gives him darshan. And to all our viewers, and certainly true of Vikram and me as well, we will wait like Lord Nandi.
We are
We'll
known
not
for resilience. We are known for patience. It just shouldn't be stretched to the limits.
we'll not step back. We'll not step back.
Yeah.
And we will see Vishwanathji again where he is meant to be. Thank you so much. I hope you guys liked this episode. I hope it was educational. I would encourage all of you to visit Vishwanathji, see the temple itself, the present temple, which has been built by Maharani Ahilyabai Holkar ji. See the structures around as well. Read Vikram's book, Waiting for Shiva, so you know all the issues that are there. The first step towards repaying our rin, our debt to our ancestors and to the Lord Mahadev is knowledge. So we should know what all happened out there. I hope this episode was useful for you. Leave comments below on what you think about it. Vikram, thank you so much for all that you do, and particularly as a Shiv Bhakt. You can't imagine how grateful I am that you wrote this book, not just as a Shiv Bhakt, but as someone who has roots in Varanasi as well.
Yes.
Now our story is known to the entire country, to the entire world, thanks to you. And there's only one way to end any episode dedicated to Lord Vishwanath. Namah Parvati Pate, Hara Hara Mahadev.
Mahadev.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Namah Shivaya.
Thank you. Thank you. Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya.